Ready to start your journey? Whether it's your first workout or you are a seasoned athlete, Endurance for Everyone Coaching wants to work with you. Our coaching team has worked with athletes from beginners to USAT national qualifiers and are comprised of experienced runners, cyclists, and triathletes who have a passion for healthy living and have been where you are. We offer comprehensive coaching programs from weekly support to basic consultation, all designed to help you achieve your goals. If you want to take your performance to the next level, look no further than Endurance for Everyone Coaching. Go to www.teamE4E.com and click on the coaching link or send an email to teamE4E@enduranceforeveryone.com. And let's get started.
Welcome to this week's Endurance for Everyone podcast.
The following program is for entertainment purposes only. Though the hosts of this show are certified Ironman coaches, their attempts at long-course triathlons and endurance events should not be taken as an endorsement for you to do something stupid too. You should make your own bad decisions, then podcast about it. Now, let's start the show.
Hey, this is John Harris.
And this is Rob Bozovich.
And Endurance is for Everyone, and this is the Endurance for Everyone podcast.
Hey guys, it's Rob here. Today on the show, I have the race director for the Fire on the Mountain that John and I have been talking about. It's Kevin Spradlin. We're going to go through a few minutes of his, running history, a little bit about the race. So this one proves to be another good one. So hang in till the end, and you'll get a ton of information. Kevin, thanks for coming on. I know it was hectic for us to make this work with our schedules. I really do appreciate it. And welcome to the Endurance for Everyone podcast.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for your interest. And hopefully some folks will be interested in coming down to make it for one of our training runs or for the event itself and have some fun in the woods.
You very well might. I'm going to call them out without them even knowing it. You very well might see a couple of them come down. Karen, one of our listeners, is from the Pittsburgh area and loves trail racing and running. So she quite possibly could. It'd be about a 2.5 hour shot for me, so I'd have to really plan it with my wife, and I'm on some thin ice with some things I've done, so I want to make sure that I'm allowed to make it to the race, so I don't want to, ask to come for a training run, but we will see. I might put her, like I said, put her on the spot. A couple of other folks that have talked about coming down, actually, I think we have some solid commitments of 3 or 4 of them, but they're actually up in Connecticut. Might be a long ways for a run, but you never know who's just going to show up for when and so forth. Anyways, I want to go through a little bit here, and you had sent me, I'd ask a little bit about your running history, and it seems much more detailed and illustrious than mine. I know you don't know much about me, and our group has heard it, but I'll say, I started running back like 2009 or so as a way to lose weight. And, when I say one thing leads to another, I get on the local little rail trail and, I start going a little farther. Nothing compared to your distances, but it's like this major breakthrough for me, like when I run to the next town, which is like 4 miles away. Yeah, so then it's an 8-mile round trip, which is just, I feel like I'm conquering the world, So those runs, 5Ks and 10s lead to, a half marathon, full marathon. I've yet to dip my my toe into this ultra world. What started this whole thing really was I've done 7 marathons, looking to do my 8th here in the fall, which will be October. And, I'm at best, I just had almost a PR, and it was about a 4:01 marathon in Pittsburgh here in May. So I'm not really getting much faster. In order to Boston qualify, I'd have to cut 25% off from, do a 3-hour for my age group. So, I don't see that as a feasible goal. Next idea was, well, heck, if I can't get that much faster, let's go longer. And I figured, also, hey, instead of going long and easy, I seen the advertised the CNO one where it's like, Pittsburgh, DC rail trail, a nice flat ultra. And I said, no, I want to look for something hard. And yours is within driving distance and is definitely advertised at being hard. So we'll talk a little more maybe about the race. So not a little more, maybe. We definitely will talk about the race. That's why we got you on. But tell me tell the group about your running career. I mean, I'm looking at a few of the things you had wrote down here. How'd you get started in it? How long you been doing it? And, what was your general build up there?
Well, first you mentioned the Sino Canal 100, and I should say that Jim Treese and Bill Sousa and the gang there of volunteers do a wonderful job in any event they touch. So that's, if you're looking for a flat 100, that's something to consider here on the East Coast. As far as my running, I'm 39 now. I started 25 years ago when I was playing video games about this time of year. My freshman year of high school was getting ready, coming up. My two older brothers were on the high school cross country team, and they convinced me to put the controller down to the Sega Genesis. And 25 years later, I'm still trying to run, and they aren't. Actually, for almost 2 years, I've been out of running. I suffered a knee injury, as yet still undiagnosed. I'm hopeful that it gets I get a treatment plan soon. But over the years, let's see. So I've done a couple of ultras. I've done a couple of marathons. I've DNF'd too many times that I care to admit, but it's part of the process. Over the last few years, I had started to focus on the shorter distances, and even as a non-traditional student, joined the cross-country team of the Division III university I attended back in 2016, and was getting my 8K or 5 mile times down pretty low. I was happy with that. I've always considered myself an average runner. I enjoy it like any runner. I probably talk about it too much. My kids will vouch for that. But I've always loved it. I've had fun competing against myself and a few other folks. So I entered the ultra world first around 2001 or 2002, I believe, with the JFK 50. It's a great first ultra. Tons of support along the course. The event has changed over the years, but that hasn't. That aspect of it has not. And Spindler does a good job with that event. So I live now I live near, right across the Potomac River. I live in West Virginia, but across the river and 30 minutes east of me is Green Ridge State Forest, 48,000 acres of wooded area. And about 8 or 9 years ago, I had thought of an ultra marathon while working with the local historical society and working through Mount Savage, and it would have been a bi-state ultra, part Maryland, part Pennsylvania, along the old Turkey Foot trail in Mount Savage, Maryland, and we would have been based in that small village. I talked with the forest manager of Green Ridge State Forest. I had never been in there before, and Champ Zumbrin was the forest manager at the time. Champ says, "Kevin, you've got to come see Green Ridge if you like running." And he and I went out, and he told me which exit to get off of. I was that unfamiliar with the forest. I parked at forest headquarters by myself this first visit, and within 5 minutes, I got lost, and I knew this was the place I wanted to have the Fire on the Mountain 50K.
So that's how you thought of it. And we usually go about an hour. We're like 7 minutes in. I think we can stretch this one out, Kevin. So that's pretty great. And I only know what I know from what little research I've done online and or watched some videos, read some blog posts about people coming down and doing it. So the couple things that I see and give people some landmarks if they haven't looked at any of it, it looks like you're almost the park is about halfway between Berkeley Springs and Rocky Gap Casino Resort. Is that be about the two best landmarks to give people if they're trying to hone in on it here?
Yeah, or you could even say about 45 or 50 minutes west of Hagerstown, Maryland. Hagerstown would be the largest city nearby. That would be, and maybe an hour and 15 minutes west of Frederick, Maryland, which would be slightly larger than Hagerstown. Okay. And I'd be remiss if I did not credit current forest manager Mark Beals for coming up with the name of the event. I had worked with his Department of Natural Resources staff to come up with over maps to come up with a good route and safe route, but challenging and scenic. And I think we accomplished all that. But 9 years ago, we didn't have a name yet. And over a particular weekend, Mark was listening to the radio, and the Grateful Dead came on. And he calls me, and Mark hasn't called me but once in 9 years. He calls me and says, "Kevin, I've got a great name for your race." And that's how it came to be, Fire on the Mountain 50K. So.
It's funny, in the back of my mind, and I haven't talked about this with you, not that we've talked that much before this. I actually had reached out to somebody because I thought I'm not musically inclined whatsoever. Okay. So, like, I can't read it, can't play an instrument, anything like that. It's just not my thing, but I could appreciate it. And almost like when I say a parody, like a Weird Al, how he takes the rhyme and then goes with it, I keep hearing in my mind, Fire on the Mountain from Marshall Tucker Band. And that being, when I actually reached out to somebody the other day to ask them about the possibility of could they piece me together, and because I'm thinking their lyrics, so Fire on the Mountain, lightning in the air, da da da. I'm thinking like, hey, that I want to say there's like the race is fire on the mountain and there's glory out there, like something like that, like along the lines of like if you do the race and there's this glory and you work hard and all, and because the song, and once again it's 6 long months on a dust covered trail and training 6 long months on these dust covered trail, it's things like that, like it comes to my mind. But when I went to Google that, the Grateful Dead song came up, and I'm fairly familiar with the Dead, but that's not one song that I knew. So as soon as I saw that, I'm like, I kind of like discarded it and like, oh no, not the one I wanted. I moved on to the Marshall Tucker lyrics. But that's actually how you guys got your name. So
Absolutely.
it's very interesting. And then this is the 9th year for it then, or is this the 10th year? Is there 9 done, or is this number 9?
This is year 8, I think. We started in
Okay.
2010. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, we started in 2010, but we skipped 2015. I had moved out of state, and I was unsuccessful in finding someone to take my place as race director.
Mm-hmm.
So I decided not to have it in 2015, and the intent was to never bring it back. And my philosophy as a race director is once a race is dead, it's dead forever. There was some. And at that point, for the first 5 years of the race, it was a point-to-point course. For those who are familiar with it, it was red trail, green trail, logging road, purple trail. Well, now it's just red trail, green trail, turn around, green trail, red trail. But the most difficult section of the race is the red trail, and running it in reverse direction is probably more difficult than the initial way. Plus, you're on very tired legs at that point. So it's probably more challenging, I would say, and than the original version of the event. The times reflect that. Runner, whether you're back of the pack, mid pack, or even up front, the times reflect slower performances. Now, some elite runners, or what I call regionally elite runners, are able to go against that curve. But I think that for the overwhelming majority of runners, I would say that the times have slowed down a little bit. I'm looking at the top 10 performers in the men since 2010. None of the top 10 performances are from when it's been a out and back course.
Mm-hmm.
And for the women, only 2 of the top 10 performances are since the course has been changed to an out and back event. So it's been definitely, I think it's improved on the challenge. You've got to earn the finisher's medal, and for that, to qualify, you need to finish in 10 hours and 0 seconds or less. And we've had a couple years where some runners from Connecticut, incidentally, who crossed the finish line, and off the top of my head, they were around 15 minutes after the deadline. And at that time, it was still a point-to-point, and at that time, it was also 9.5 hours instead of 10. And they wanted the finisher's premium, and I politely but firmly I had to tell them, I'm sorry, you didn't earn it. The rules say otherwise. So we kind of had to say no, and they went home a little unhappy that day. And but maybe the whole spirit of the event, as I saw it back in the beginning 8 or 9 years ago was that it wasn't about the finisher's premium. The first year, I don't even remember if we had a finisher's premium, to be honest with you. It was just about having a great day in the woods, enjoying each other, or if you felt, don't run with anyone, just get lost in the woods, which is easy enough. If you're lucky enough, you'll see a bear or two. We've had some runners see bears on the course during the training runs in the race, as have I while I'm marking the course. It's just a wonderful place to lose yourself and kind of find yourself at the same time. For those who are focused on the swag, and I don't even like the word, much less the concept, but we've gone a little fancier than in some years, but this event is not the one with the blow up finish line. This is with the running on a generator. This is not an aid station every mile and a half. This is it's a challenging event, which you'll do most of on your own or with a running buddy, whether you came with or met one on the trail. And the idea is to get to the from the start line to the finish line as quickly as you can, or just mosey on and get it there in under 10 hours. And if you get there over 10 hours, you won't get the finisher's premium, but you got the most bang for the buck, and you got a story to tell anyway. So I hope people, regardless of what version they've run, the point to point or out and back, I would think that they would say the party after, sitting around a campfire and drinking their preferred beverage is as much a part of the experience as running 32.8 miles.
You said a bunch of stuff there, all of which I agree, and a couple of things I just want to dive a little deeper into, and I couldn't take notes fast enough on all of it, and so if I miss some of it here, maybe we'll circle back to it if I remember it later. That being said, is you did say finisher's premium, and I saw that on the website, and I want to say it was elusive in the fact that I didn't know if it was a medal or a buckle or like a pair of gloves or even just like a piece of tree bark, like here you go, like some people do that. So you do give out finishers, and I'm gonna say it that way, as in finishers medals. So if you finish, you get it if you're an official finisher, right?
If you're an official finisher, and I'm vague on the website for a reason, because some years it'll be March when I have a great idea of, that's going to be the finisher's premium, and then sometimes it's around September when I finally make up my mind on what it's going to be. One year they were 20 or 25 ounce. They were pretty big glass mugs, with the M event logo sketched into the side that we got a great deal on, and so I had those available. Those were probably still the most expensive or second most expensive finishers premiums that we had, but they went over really, really well. People really liked them. They were something of substance, weight-wise, and not just a lightweight medal. We don't do the buckle. I'm a traditionalist, and it's okay for people to have differing opinions, but I'm a traditionalist. I believe the buckle should be safe for the higher mileage races.
So I don't want to cut you off, and I'm going to ask you there. This is my first ultra, and when I say I know nothing about it, that's where and I say ignorant in the fact that I just don't know. I'm ignorant to this culture. So that was going to immediately be my question. Buckle. And so you're saying that mostly buckles are held in the allure in this, I don't want to say industry, but in this group that it's a 100-miler you get the buckle. So not the 50K, not the 100K, not the 50-miler. That's the 100-milers where you're looking at buckles for these things?
Well, and it's people will answer that differently depending on their own experience. In my experience, and I consider myself a traditionalist in this aspect. I believe that the buckles should be and often are saved for the 100-milers. With the commercialization of the world of ultra running, even with the small mom and pop run ultra events, buckles have become more affordable, so more events are doing them, more events of varying distances.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, I don't call them out. I don't degrade them. That's to each his own, or to each his or her own. I'm okay with that. That's just the fire on the mountain, unless it ever adds a 100-mile distance, won't have buckles. but I am vague on the website as far as what the finisher's premium is, simply because sometimes I haven't decided yet. Um, this year, I kind of have an idea, but I don't have anything nailed down. Matter of fact, I had an exchange, back and forth email exchange with a potential runner. This person I don't believe has signed up yet, but they were asking about what the premium was going to be, a medal or something else, and I was trying to explain to them, in a nutshell, if you're focused solely or primarily on what the finisher's premium is, this event might not be for you. Um, this person might expect more course support, might expect more spectators, might expect a rock band at every aid station in Green Ridge State Forest. That on November 4th, that will not be the case. So I strongly encourage people to do their research. Email me questions if they have them. The email address is on the website, and I'll answer. I usually answer very, very quickly, as quickly as I can anyway. And this event is not for everybody. For those who want that swag, then this event might not be for them. But everybody's welcome, and everybody can prefer a different experience. Some might just like some might race it, and some might use it as a training run or whatever. Everybody has their own reasons for coming out, and I'm thankful for everyone who chooses to show up on race day. Those are the ones that are get my attention and focus, are the ones who show up on race day. And it's a beautiful start to the race at Point Overlook, overlooking the Potomac River into West Virginia. Usually the sun is just right, and there's a little bit of fog to give it a little eerie feeling that time of year. And and then we sound the horn, and it's full speed ahead, or full whatever, waddle ahead, whatever speed you're going. So
it's basically go for it and go do your thing. You say that, and I'll circle back on one part here, and that is, you talk about the I'm not going to say commercialization, but how some people expect different things, or people, you're saying if you're in it for the swag, you're kind of in it for the wrong reason. And I don't know, maybe it's just my personality. No, I'm not saying that in any bad way. I mean, if people, and I'll say my stuff here, and that is like my first marathon was Erie, Pennsylvania, which was on Prescow, which was 2 loops of Prescow, dead flat, 2,000 people, blue glass metal, like when I say metal, air quote there, blue glass finishers premium, if you want to say that, on a little leather strap. I've also done, I'm going to do Chicago here in the fall. I've done Pittsburgh, and I've done New York City. I've done Marine Corps. And that's a whole different race. You go to New York, you get into, I got in through the lottery, and 50,000 runners, and it's all about it. That is a great race, but it's all about, you're going to have 1 million spectators, you're going to have all of the gear. I mean, they send out training, you can buy training gear, finishers gear, all the different stuff. I purposely, one of the reasons, in my mind at least, I was looking for your race for the exact reason, like what, and I don't want to get it wrong here in case you don't do it, but one of the race reports, or somebody had a video, you finished by picking up a log, carrying it around, them dropping it on the fire. I mean, that's yours, right?
yes, that's ours. It's not exactly a log. It's varying sizes of mostly a stick or something you throw in the campfire. We do have some runners who will go into the woods and dig out a much larger log after finishing 32.6 miles, and then run the last 2 carrying it over their head, just for fun, because they haven't expended enough energy. I guess the race wasn't hard enough. I'm kidding. They are celebrating their accomplishment, and they do that on occasion. But what we hand them is a fairly easy to carry, almost if you think of it, maybe twice the size of a baton in track.
Yeah.
Lightweight, specifically for this purpose. But yes, some runners go into the woods and find their own, and they can be as large as whatever nature has let fall to the ground. Yeah.
So. And that's why, like, to me, a part of this allure, kind of, you started it with you start, and there's maybe a little fog, and it gives to me, there's just this this aura, this draw to you're in nature. This is like you keep saying it. 32 miles, 32.6 miles of nature. You know what I mean? That's kind of why that's what drew me into this and with the idea of it, and that's why hopefully maybe you'll give us. I mean, it's hard to describe. Oh, hey, the course other than tree, climb, river. You know what I mean? It's some of it is you have to be there, and that's why I'm just really excited for the possibility coming down to do this. I like being out in nature. I like hiking. I like hunting. I like biking and all of that stuff. So that's what I was looking for this, and this is really just seems like it's going to fit the bill in every avenue and aspect. And I say that with all the everything I'm saying with the utmost respect, and like I don't know how to say it other than I feel like I'm gonna be joining a brotherhood. Like I'm coming down to you when you go camping for a weekend with people or something like that, there's a certain type of bond that you have versus you can sit next to somebody for 40 hours a week. You go spend a day on the trail with them, it's a whole different experience. And that's where I don't know that's my outsider's take. I haven't done this yet, but that's I guess what I'm expecting to happen. And you can tell me if I'm way off key, off kill on any of
Well,
that there.
I think you're spot on. I mean, it's been, I do what I can to get the aid stations in place in time, hopefully recruit enough volunteers and having start and finish line marked and whatnot. But, that atmosphere that you're speaking of and that I love, and it reminds me why I do this each year, that atmosphere primarily is created by the runners who show up. They're just a wonderful bunch of people, and some come back year after year. Every year though, we get some new folks, and it's a great mix. And whether you come this year and you have a pacer that you think you're going to spend the whole day with, and or you meet someone new along the trail, there's a fair chance that whoever you came with or whoever you meet, you're going to be a lot closer by the end of the day than you were at the 7 a.m. start. So it's I think it's a great experience. I tell people I run religiously, and I think some will agree, not all, but some will agree that there's certainly a spiritual aspect to being able to see nothing but trees and sky, or in some cases acorns and a 3 dozen water crossings. It depends on the year, really, but we've had a few different natural challenges that have changed the dynamics of the course a little bit over the years. But the air has always been crisp and cool and easy to breathe, and it makes those climbs just a tad bit more tolerable, and you go from there. So
Excellent. Step me through when I say a little bit of the course. When I say if you can, let's spend a minute or two. So you kind of said we start out back, green trail, red trail, and I've read on your what you've said here. I've read on your site as well, where you said it's harder coming back. For those who haven't gone to the site, we already know you've said it's 32.6 miles, give or take a little
30,
bit if you deviate, if we get a little lost. We said it's not flat. How much elevation are we looking at here? I know, but I want to hear it from you.
that's a great question. I've had runners send me different GPS things. This is we advertise the course as being 32.8 miles. That's certainly not exact. It's a trail race. I'm not going to. We don't certify it. Many or most trail races aren't certified. And matter of fact, I believe under USATF rules, they can't be certified. The event can be sanctioned, but the distance itself can't be certified. The goal here, as with any other event, is the distance you race on race day must be at least the advertised distance. And I think we've done that here, whether it's in the point to point that it was in the first 5 years or now the third year of the out and back course. So one runner, as far as elevation goes, has sent me a chart. They get real fancy off these watches these days, that it has 5,387 feet of elevation change. How exactly accurate that is, I don't know. I know there are some ups and downs. I know some ups and downs. Some people count and some wouldn't. When it was a point to point, there was the logging road section. It was about 8 miles long, and I remember a runner asking me, "Well, how many hills are on that section?" I said, "Well, about three." And they emailed me after the race, kind of tongue in, kind of mad, but happy mad. I mean, they weren't really mad at me, but they said I counted at least 8 hills on that section. And well, it's all relative to what you're used to training. If you come from a very flat area, then this is going to be even more difficult. But so unofficially, from what I'm looking at, a runner who ran the course in 2016, the first year of the out and back course, is 5,387 feet of elevation change. Your watch might read something different on race day, and you're absolutely right. It's I mark the course as best I can, but it's 48,000 acres of wilderness. If you're not running heads up, you're probably going to get lost, and that's on you. Just congratulations, you just didn't pay for that extra mileage, and we don't charge you that when you get to the finish line.
You don't look at the watch
yeah,
and say, "Hey, you owe us a few bucks."
we could. That would be an interesting aspect to add into. We'll take a vote this year at the start line. We'll see what people say.
You know
But
what I saw at one point, and I don't even know if it's still out there, and I think it was called, I'm probably going to butcher all this, maybe I'm making up part two. I think it was called like a Cerebrun or something. So it was they advertised it as, I'm going to say 5K to half marathon. And they're like, okay, well, I want to sign up for the 10K. And like, no, it's 5K up to a half marathon. And like, you would run to a certain point and like a trail, and there would be like a question. And it would be like, okay, if 2 plus 2 equals, and they have an arrow and it says 4 to the left and 8 to the right. And if you got the answer correct, if you got all the answers correct around the entire course, you ended up running a 5K. But if you got basically every answer wrong, it put you onto a side trail that brought you back to the same question. So now you know you were wrong, and you had to then go and whatnot. So you could advertise this as a 32.8 mile ultra up to question mark. You can just deviate people onto side trails and let them come back on. And hey, if they want to do a little extra distance, it's that's fine. You won't charge them for it, right?
Well, I know you say that in a comical way, but that brings me back actually to my being. I consider myself a traditionalist.
Mm-hmm.
What you described as a race director, kind of providing options in one capacity or another.
Yeah.
I don't. That's not something I would ever stage as a race director. Some people have staged those types of events with great success. And I think the most obvious one, there's one that's gotten a lot of press in the last 2 or 3 years, is the Barclays Marathon, where it's and my take on that, what a wonderful event, what a challenge, what an inspiration to those who start, who toe the start line and who actually finish, the very few who do so. My take is that's not a traditional foot race. That's a foot race plus, a foot race plus other things. You have orienteering. It's a little bit different. Mine, the Fire on the Mountain 50K is much more traditional in that the course is marked to the intent to be able to lead runners, guide runners from the start line to the midway point and then back again. I do my best to mark each area that in an effort to eliminate what I call moments of indecision. And over the years, I've marked the course differently, and I've had different feedback each year. Each year I try to do better. I'll say that, in November of 2018, hopefully it's the best yet as far as marked. But to be sure, you're in the woods and it is a trail race. And, as I mentioned, you have to run a heads up kind of run. And there's not a solid line of baseball field lime on the ground. There's not any rope that you follow for the entire 32.8 miles. You have to pay attention to the markings on the trees placed by DNR. You have to pay attention to the ribbons that we place, and we tell you what colors they are on race morning. And if you don't do all that, yes, you will involuntarily likely deviate from the course and add on to your miles. We are very fortunate that in the few instances that people have gotten off course, they've either corrected themselves after a short bit, because we can tell people accurately that, hey, if you haven't seen this kind of trail marking in about 400 to 600 meters, you might want to check your location, check yourself. You might be off course. And so, we're talking between 400 and 600 meters, so between 8 and 12 meters total. That's still less than a mile, even that longest distance there. It's about 3/4 of a mile, and so that's not a horrible extra distance to go by. You can add a lot more than that if you want. If you don't think that's enough, well, hey, go for it. Get to the finish line and go run it again.
So yeah, they can do the fire on the mountain double, to just go back out.
I mean, they can send me a message later on and tell me how it went. But I'm at about 6 o'clock race day. I'm cleaning up and getting ready to head home. So, yeah, the course is marked again. It's not like a 5K where every turn is marked. You've got to, and this is where trail experience comes in. Every soft left or right turn doesn't have to be marked like a 5K road race. But again, I try to mark the course to eliminate those moments of indecision, to keep and that's really, and this might sound bad to the people like me and you who are mid-pack or back of the pack runners, but I do that. I mean, I respect everyone who gets to the start line regardless of what their time might be. But I really, the slower runners, if they run an extra mile or two, they're probably going to be, happy about it, or at least less unhappy about it. Whereas if you're consider yourself a contender to win, and you are off course due to a race director's error or lack of marking, I think that runner has a right to be, regardless of distance. I think that runner has a right to be a little upset with the race director. Yep. That falls on me, and yep. So we do our best. I think was it last year or 2016? I'd have to go back. I think it was 2016. The first year we had an out and back course, and I marked the course as best I could. But on the way back, the green trail, the trees are marked with green paint by DNR, and it's kind of hard to see with the green leaves on the trees, even at that time of year. And of course, I have driven up at various points. But there was a point where on the way back, it looked drastically different than it did on the way there. And of course, you're a little over 17 miles into the race at this point after you turn around and go back down Kirk Road and enter the woods again. And they were probably a little bit out of it, and rightfully so. Maybe not paying attention. That's okay too. But they corrected me, and they brought it to my attention that there was an area that was not well marked, and not as well marked as it should have been. Now they were in the lead. They were among the contenders. And to my knowledge, about 3 people out of the, however many we had that year expressed issues. So a very small percentage of it, but I still felt it was valid, and I tried to correct that last year. And I think we were successful in that. I don't think anyone complained about that particular section last year. So there's always room for improvement. We're not going to, me and anyone else out there as a volunteer this year, we're not going to be perfect. There's going to be, ways to make it better for 2019 and beyond. But that and the weather and whatever food you eat and however much sleep you get the night before and whatever's stressing you out or not in life, or a spouse or kids or work or whatever, it's a different adventure every year anyway. And the people who keep on coming back, they come for the trails regardless of what they offer, and they seem to have a good time. So I'm very fortunate to, Green Ridge State Forest is my favorite place to run on the East Coast, and I'm very fortunate to be able to invite people to return or come back for the first time to run in the woods and see what they think of it. And I remember one of the most powerful comments I've ever heard. A friend of mine named Pete, he had gotten into road running because of his son, his adult son. He was an older guy, and he had gotten from 5K up. He even ran a marathon on the road. And then one day he came out for a training run with the running club, Potomac Highlands Distance Club. And he at the end of that training run, we were out in Green Ridge State Forest that day, and he said, "Kevin, if I had known trail running existed, I never would have set foot on a road." And I thought that was pretty cool. So, people have their own experience. I have seen runners who clearly are better suited to the road than trails. The wilderness is not their friend. Well, the only way, or heights are not your friend, depending. And that one's for Mary, out in Frederick County. But the only way you get to know a little bit more about yourself is to challenge yourself, and that's what they do when they show up for Fire on the Mountain 50K. So.
Awesome. You were just going there, and fantastic info. Didn't want to cut off any of that. I only have one or two other questions, maybe, and you'd answered a lot of them, and it covered a lot of great information there. I just had
Rob,
one.
I told you to ramble on, so
I appreciate. No, that's why. I'm not vain enough to ever think that my word count needs to be high. Whenever you're going and talking passionately about it, I just want to let it flow, because that's where most of the great info comes from. My only question, and then just going back to the course, and this one, I'm going to say it again. My first ultra, so I don't know anything about any of it. You've done a bunch. I was going to say, and I actually pulled up your website just to quickly scan for it. Drop bag. Looks like you do a drop bag thing, and you put it in it, and it's available at what you call the Oasis. That's the halfway point, I'm assuming.
Exactly.
So when I say it this way, if somebody like me, the majority, 9 out of 10, I don't even, forgive me when I say it that way. I don't want to say we're having 10 folk come down, but we're probably pushing more along the lines of like maybe 6 people that are committed to coming down. Of that, okay. I'm going to say 5 out of 6 have some experience with this. I have 0. So what are we talking about? Like, do I bring it then the morning and you're going to truck it out there? What would I want to specifically for your race, assuming it sounds like we start in daylight, and then knowing just geographically you're similar to where I am, I should potentially be finishing in daylight. Are we talking about needing a headlamp at the drop bag? We were asking some people their opinions. Do you see more people coming with hydration vests or trekking poles? Give me like a little bit of a rundown on what you see from your typical runner based on this terrain, what I could expect, and what might be different than some other races, so to say.
Sure. Well, that you asked a lot in that little bit. So and if I don't address something, it's only because my mind is forgotten. So please ask again. But
yes, sir.
So I'll say this first and foremost. The old adage, I think, for any experienced trail runner is to never, ever try something new on race day, whether it's what you're going to hydrate with, vests versus handheld bottles versus only aid stations, whatever you're going to, new shoes, Aquaphor versus Vaseline, whatever it is you're going to do. You should practice that in the weeks and months leading up to race day, and don't try anything new on the race day. That's just silly. I think that sets anyone up for failure. And sometimes it's the most experienced who think, oh, well, I can get away with, wearing these new shoes. And then they're the ones who end up with the blister or whatever. And they realize they should have, gone on a couple training runs with them. So I think the most important thing is whatever you plan, training is the time you work out what's best for you, whether it's the hydration vest, a Camelback, a handheld bottles. I went through some time, and over time for different events, your preferences might change. For a while, I preferred to have a vest on with water in the back. I never really took to just Camelbacks. I like to have a couple extra pockets, so I had a vest. And when the last several the last couple hundred trail runs I went on, I only had a handheld bottle. That worked for me. I didn't feel like I needed anything else. From maybe 18 miles on down or so, depending on the terrain that we were going to do that day. So it's hard for me to answer that specifically for you or anyone person in particular, because it's all about personal preference. You might not like the idea of holding a handheld bottle. You might not like the idea of, you asked about the hiking poles. There's a guy, I'll give Mitch a shout out. He's at first sight, he might not look that intimidating. A lot of trail runners don't, in fact. But once the horn goes off, he's tough to keep up with. I know because I've tried to keep up with him on the trails. He uses hiking poles. He's very efficient at them. I don't think I would want something in my hands all the time. Now, when he doesn't want them, he puts them in. He carries a vest that he can put them in. I don't like to be bound down by all that, but I think that again, it goes back to what you practice in training is what you find your preferences in those training runs are. Is what you should practice on race day. Don't wait till race day to try something new. You talked about Boston qualifying times. The one and only time I've ever tried to qualify for Boston, I tried something new on race day. I didn't follow this old adage. Well, guess what? I bombed for multiple reasons, but I bombed. I wore a different pair of shoes than I had planned on. Why, I don't know, because my training cycle had just gone about as picture perfect as one could imagine. I was on set for about a 3:10 on either side of that for a marathon out in Ohio, and I woke up that race morning. I thought, you know what, I'm going to wear these shoes instead of these shoes. And at 19.7, I was done. My day was over.
Oh,
so,
man.
I encourage anyone. I mean, mathematically, at the halfway point, I was still in it, but I knew I was done. Math be darned. So, but I encourage anyone to go through all these questions that they might have, different gels. One thing we don't do anymore, and I think anyone should be made aware of this. And for those familiar with this event, they already know, but we don't do gels. We don't give gels on the course anymore. Runners have to bring their own, and that was we did provide power gels for the first 2 or 3 years on the course, and we don't anymore, just because I was in the dark cleaning up too many gel packets from the race. After all the runners had gone home, and I just thought, well, runners can bring their own, and as it turns out, not everybody uses them if they're not available. So we have plenty of food at the aid stations and stuff, and certainly runners can bring their own and carry their own stuff, or have it at the midway point. We'll get to that in a minute. Don't try anything new. Test it out in the training. Now's the time. August, September, early October is before your taper begins. A real, couple, 2 or 3 good long runs of 18 to 20 miles. Though on trail, those are the times when you want to test out those new things, and you want to find out if something rubs the wrong way. You don't want to wait till race day. Now, you mentioned the midway point, or we call it the Oasis, and there are a couple of benches there. So you come up Kirk Road, and you'll see this on November 4th if you can make it, Rob, and you'll come up, you'll exit the woods, you'll turn right onto Kirk Road, and it's a Forest Service road that you'll come up. It's pretty steep. You'll walk it, don't worry. And almost everybody does. I walk it too. But you get to so you crest this Kirk Road hill, and you get to Green Ridge Road, and you're overlooking the valley, and there are 2 picnic tables there, and all this food, and all the volunteers. There's the first time you've seen people in several miles, and you're like, the view's great, the food's great. Maybe I just don't want to leave anymore. Thankfully, it hasn't been a major problem of people dropping out right there. It happens by 1 or 2 every year, not the 10 or 20 that I often fear as a race director, thinking, how would I get them back? But I'd figure it out. But it is a nice view at the midway point. As far as drop bags, yes, on race morning, as people are there's about a quarter mile that separates the finish line, and which is where people pick up their packet on race morning now, and the start line where they walk down, and we direct them in plenty of time for the start. And so about a quarter mile, and in between the finish line and the start line is a designated vehicle, and it might be mine, it might be whoever, but whichever one I designate, I'll yell and say, hey, that one's where you put your drop bags. And it's whether a pickup truck and they throw it in the bed, or somebody with the trunk open, as long as it gets in the right vehicle, it'll get to the right spot at the right time. There aren't limits on this is a small event, a low-key event. I know some ultras have placed limits on the size and weight of a drop bag. We've never had someone abuse the policy, so we don't really have a policy. I think if we started having 50-pound drop bags or suitcase-sized drop bags, we'd have to take that runner aside and say their plans are going to change that day. But certainly we're all volunteers. No one's covered under workers' comp, and we don't want someone to throw their back out by carrying an aid drop bag to the aid station. As far as what you put in it, that's up to you. Some people put shoes and socks. If the course, Green Ridge State Forest is the driest part of Maryland historically. But one year we had, I think it was in, oh my God, it was in the first 3 years. We had a snow, 6 inches of fresh snow fall in the last weekend in October. We actually had to postpone a week. Well, in that week, all that snow melted, and every water crossing had water in it. And it was about knee deep in many places. And the water from 15 Mile Creek, or Town Creek in this case, just goes, winds back and forth like a snake along the land. And you every time when you cross it, you yell some things in your mind or out loud to get through it. Your feet get numb, and then about 10, 20 feet, you're like out of the water. You're like, okay, I can handle this, but then you're right back into the water again. So you just never know what the adventure is going to be in Green Ridge. Generally, but most years, the stream crossings have been, you've had to spit on yourself to get wet. But one year in particular, it was cold and there was a lot of it. But that brought a new challenge. One year we had a record acorn harvest. So imagine, in the fall, what happens to the leaves on the trees?
I believe they fall to the ground.
They fall. Well, before they fell to the ground, the record acorn harvest had fallen to the ground. Then the leaves cover the acorns, and on some of these descents, it was it was scary and fun to watch at the same time. And it made for an interesting year of marking that course. And I was just walking, and so it was. It was a challenge that year. You just never know what the nature's going to throw at you. One year we finished. This is just a few years ago. One year we finished about 2 hours before the remnants of Hurricane Sandy struck. We had warned people that we might have to cancel mid-race. We got the entire race in. Everybody finished, and shortly, while I'm cleaning up, me and the volunteers are cleaning up. It starts raining pretty good, but we got the race in, so everybody was pleased, and they got out of there safely. So you just never know. In Western Maryland, once you go west of Sidling Hill, you don't know what Mother Nature is going to throw at you, but that's part of the fun.
That's part of running outside, period, let alone I don't want to say an adventure race, but this definitely sounds like it's going to be an adventure. So
well, I hope it is. If it isn't, we don't give refunds for that, but I hope I hope it's an adventure without the orienteering or the paddling or mountain biking. But Green Ridge State Forest, I think it's one of the most, as I mentioned, it's my favorite place to be outdoors on the East Coast. I think it's one of the most underutilized state forests or state facilities I've ever seen in my life. And I've lived all across the country and places beyond. And bring if the water's up and they can ask me a few days out, bring a kayak if you don't mind cold water paddling. Bring your mountain bikes if you're going to camp. Some people can't choose to camp out. Bring your mountain bikes, or even if you're staying at a hotel, bring your mountain bike and ride a few days for a little bit the day before or something like that. Tons of mountain bike trails in Green Ridge and places to ride, or bring a fishing pole if you have a fishing license, or bring a book and go find a bridge and just go find a tree, lean against it, and just listen to nature as you read a book. It's whatever you want to do. There's an awful lot to do. It's the sky's the limit. It's whatever you want to get outside and do. And then in between, on Sunday morning,
go for a little run with your friends, huh?
Exactly. New and old, absolutely.
Oh, I don't think we could say anything better or put a more perfect cap on talking about it than your little description and all that right now. So if it's all right with you, unless there's anything else you want to interject, I'll go ahead and we can wrap this up here.
The only thing I'd like to mention is the website address, is for Fire on the Mountain 50K is www.phdispatch.com. and you'll see the logo there, or simply it's a lot of people find it easier to just Google Fire on the Mountain 50K, and the website will come up in one of the first choices. So
yes,
thanks,
every time I can never remember the website, and which once again was phdispatch.com. I just always put in Google Fire on the Mountain Ultra, comes right up. First one, can't miss it. So.
Yep.
With a really cool logo of a looks like the foot with red writing around it.
Yes. So I appreciate your interest, your group's interest, and let me know if you guys. I mean, you guys are only a couple hours away. Some of your group, members of your group, might want to come down for a training run. Maybe a part of it Saturday night, part of it Sunday morning. I will have the training run schedule online soon. And but
I was gonna say I went out and looked 2-3 things, and I won't interject too much of it there because I was looking at the aid stations, and it looks like, and I'll just say this in case for I just have it in there. Looks like you guys do 7 aid stations. It looks like 3 on the trail on the way out, the Oasis turnaround, and then those same 3 I'm assuming on the way back is what we're looking at.
Correct.
And and that being said, I wanted to say I was looking at it. You do just still have 2017. Race weekend and training runs. So I assume we can look for that to be updated now that we're actually closer to it. I mean, I wouldn't expect you to have that updated in January when I was first started looking at it because, that's 11 months in advance. So yeah, we'll be looking for that information here soon, I guess.
Yeah, it will be updated in the month of August. We used to start the training runs in August, and due to we figured out that was a little bit too early, and once we did change it to an out and back, I realized we needed fewer training run dates. Mm-hmm. So it will be updated this month with complete 2018 information, but not much of it changes. Certainly, the timeline of events will stay the same. The deadlines, the aid station information will if any of that changes, we add to and we do not subtract from. So what you see there is what you're going to pretty much get on race day.
I gotta say, I try, I should say, to eat, healthy, clean, less sugar, less carbs, and all that stuff. But I gotta say, aid station 2, whenever I'm sitting here looking at M&Ms, gummy bears, PB&J, I don't know if I'll take it at mile 9 on the way back, but on the way out, I should say. But on the way back, when that becomes aid station 6, I might have to dip into them if they're there. At that point, the race will be what it'll be, and I'll finish it out, right?
I hope I see you at mile 9 because I'd be surprised if you didn't change your mind. The first 9 miles are a challenge. You have your most difficult ascents that you're going to see on that course until you go back for the last 9. And I think that's where, especially first-year runners, that's where people say, wow, I need – I'm going to change my plan a little bit, and I might grab a handful of M&Ms. I'll be surprised if you don't, but if you do, so much the better. You'll stick to your plan that you developed in training. And if you regret that decision, you can always grab some M&Ms at the aid station at the Oasis. So
perfect. Hey Kevin, thank you so much for coming on. Might get you see you later in the year if anything changes and you want to come back on, you're more than welcome to. If you feel like following along or any of your friends and you want to hear the newbie struggles of me trying to train for this, I know that we'll be talking about this race ad nauseum, I should say, through the year as I'm training and getting ready and doing it. And just appreciate you coming on, giving us your time and giving us the information. More so, overwhelmingly, I appreciate you putting it on. I'm a 5K race director in my little town here, and I know what it takes for just those 3 miles, and this is a lot more work, and just very much appreciate you having this event for people like us to come check out.
Well, I hope you get to come down and enjoy Green Ridge State Forest and enjoy the adventure and whatever that day offers, and I look forward to having you guys, and we'll go from there. Thanks for your interest.
Hey, thank you so much. Hey, everyone, thanks for listening to us. If you like the show, please feel free to go out, leave us some reviews, give us some comments. You can email myself, Rob at enduranceforeveryone.com, or my co-host, who's not on this show since it was just an interview, John at enduranceforeveryone.com. Just want to go and wrap it up. Thank Kevin once again. And say get out there and endurance is for everyone. This is the Endurance for Everyone podcast. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Endurance for Everyone podcast. If you have comments or questions for the show, send an email to teamE4E at enduranceforeveryone.com. And remember, swim calm, bike strong, and run steady.